This is an incredibly significant day in the history of our country and the Parliament.
Probably one of the most momentous days in the history of our nation.
Well done. Well done on the assimilation agenda.
Now, what we need is action. That is the responsibility of all of us, Indigenous and non-Indigenous.
A bill to enact to alter the Constitution.
Today was a day for Australia's Parliament to formally clear the way for a referendum on constitutional recognition for Indigenous Australians and for an Indigenous voice. The Parliament had taken up the debate started by activists like Pat Anderson.
Australia is one of the few liberal democracies in the world that does not have any arrangement, any settlement with its First Peoples. This is big for us, and we can do better than we're doing. And it's not a big ask. Yes, it has to have some power. Yes, and you will give us the power. When you vote yes, we have the mandate of the Australian people. And then we can talk as equals, more equal, with the Parliament and the executive of the day.
Today, the political debate ends. Today, we can start a national conversation at the community level.
Linda Burney's declaration that the political debate has ended may be a bit optimistic. For starters, there is the practical consideration that politicians on both the yes and no side of the debate will be tasked with framing the pamphlets putting their respective cases. And it is hard to believe that what has already become an often bitter debate, and a very political debate, will be something different anytime soon. In the past week, the Albanese government has been seriously confronting the possibility that the referendum on the voice will be defeated. There have been hard conversations that have reflected on how the debate has gone until now and where it needs to go in the future. Much of the heavy lifting until now has been done by the people behind the Uluru Statement from the Heart, and the government has taken many of its cues from its own Indigenous MPs and senators. Polling has shown that voters have wanted to hear from Indigenous leaders, from the Prime Minister and from Indigenous MPs. There are now 11 MPs and senators across the Parliament, all with differing views on the voice, and they are likely to continue to play a huge role in the next few months. Their very existence is sometimes cited by the No campaign as a reason the voice is unnecessary.
Although I'm of Wiradjuri heritage, I'm also a proud member of the Australian Labor Party, and I represent the electorate of Robertson, and that's how it's going to differ with the voice, which not only will it be an independent body with no political appointments, it will provide that independent voice to government about the issues that will affect Aboriginal people.
We are, as Indigenous politicians, only 11 of the 227 here in the Parliament, and it doesn't matter how hard we work, we alone are not going to be able to make the difference to close the gap and to continue to work on the disparity, particularly across all of those overrepresentations of statistics for Indigenous people across Australia.
Not all Indigenous members of Parliament support the voice.
Today, I am forced to speak about what is, at its core, a multi-year-long distraction from this government's complete lack of plan and complete inaction in addressing those real issues. Today I rise to speak about Labor's voice. Over the last few days, I have sat in this place and heard empty platitude after empty platitude, virtue signal after virtue signal, paying of respects for First Nations Australians, cries for reconciliation, and of course acknowledgement after acknowledgement.
I will vote yes to assist the passage of this bill. I remain, however, against the constitutional amendment being put to the Australian people.
So what do Indigenous members of Parliament tell their constituents when they speak to them? What is their message to the Australian people?
What I say to people is it's fantastic that in this 47th Parliament we've had 11 First Nations and MPs elected right across the political spectrum. It's fantastic. But in the 48th Parliament and the 49th Parliament, that may not be the case. What constitutionally enshrining a voice does is it allows that voice, that First Nations, that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to be there on a permanent basis, regardless of who's elected.
Tonight on Yanyuwa country, they're going to dance. For the next 3 nights, they're going to dance. The Yanyuwa, the Garwa, the Mara,
the Gurindji peoples for the Mulundari festival. And I've asked them, please, dance really strong for us so that I can feel this ground shake here on Ngunnawal country at Capitol Hill. Shake this place, my ancestors, shake this place, my families, and you dance strong. Because that is who we are.
The voice they have promised will give First Nations a say, and with that, all will be well with the Aborigines. The Aboriginal problem will be fixed. But the truth is, it is just constitutional recognition with a powerless advisory body as window dressing.
The target for healthy birth weights for babies has gone from being on track to not on track. This is not an abstract conversation to me. These are not just numbers on a page. These conversations are about my family. These are about my community.
The divisions in the Indigenous Parliament reflect divisions in the Indigenous community, some of which are based on the question of whether the Voice does anything for remote communities in places such as the Northern Territory.
I've been speaking to many people in the Lingiari community about the Voice. The Voice is a convenient word for saying, let the right people talk. If you ask community people, do you support the Voice? Some of them might say, what do you mean? What's that word? If you ask the same person, should your people be allowed to talk to government about any government policies or laws that affect them and their country, they will say, are you stupid? Of course.
There are those who are no, there are those who are yes, and there are those who are unsure, but all the while challenging each other to be the better part of ourselves throughout this. And that is the tone that I ask we keep and maintain throughout our journey towards the referendum. That we maintain that and we hold that.
Ultimately, the greatest pressure to ensure the Voice succeeds, seemingly now against the odds, will be on the Prime Minister.
And I say to my fellow Australians, Parliaments pass laws, but it is people who make history.
Linda Burney is the Minister for Indigenous Australians. Linda Burney, how did you feel at the moment that the bill passed today?
Well, it was a massive day today in the Parliament, and when the bill went through the Senate and people started clapping, I just felt absolutely proud of everyone, proud of the fact that we'd made it this far. And of course, this is another very important road to the referendum later this year.
Now, you and your colleagues have said that a yes vote will create history and make Australia a better country. In what way?
We see the referendum and a successful yes vote as a very important unifying moment for the nation. Let's remember that the Voice is about recognition of the extraordinary 65,000 years. That's part of your story, Sarah, it's part of my story, it's part of this country's story. But it's also about listening, and most importantly, it is about doing things differently, getting advice on issues that affect First Nations people so that we can get better outcomes, because we cannot keep doing what we're doing now. It is not working.
At the same time, Conservative Indigenous Senator Jacinta Price said that if the yes vote is successful, we will be divided forever. Why did you come to such a different conclusion?
I have been on this earth 66 years. I've worked in Aboriginal affairs for 40-odd years, and I have seen things from a government perspective. I've seen things through a non-government perspective, but I've also always seen them through the eyes of an Aboriginal woman. And people will have different points of view. What we're asking for in this debate, Sarah, is respect, honesty, understanding that there are different points of views, and that is okay. But at the end of the day, This is about changing the lives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It is not okay that we have a huge life expectancy gap. It is not okay that babies are not born at a healthy birth weight. And it's certainly not okay that a young Aboriginal man has got more chance of going to jail than to university. These are the things that The Voice will help us change.
Now, in the final Senate debate, there were a series of questions from the opposition asking for detail, but underlying those questions was the view that The Voice will fundamentally change the way that Australian democracy works. Do you understand, with everything that you know, do you understand what it is that your opponents actually fear?
I think they are sowing division. I think they are polarising people and unnecessarily causing fear. There is nothing to fear from this proposal. It can only do good and change the life outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and finally complete our nation's birth certificate of the Constitution. Fear-mongering is not where I see things being constructive. And I just say this, Sarah, they go low, we go high.
Does that mean that their questions are insincere?
I listened to some of that debate. There was not one single amendment that was accepted or passed or even introduced successfully. This debate has been going on for over 6 or 7 months now. And when you think about where this proposal came from, it didn't come from the government. It came from grassroots Aboriginal people through 12 regional dialogues, a constitutional convention at Uluru. And it is a statement with good intent for this country as well as for First Nations people.
The Prime Minister continues to call it a modest proposition. Is that the right description of it?
In many ways, it is not only modest, but it is incredibly generous. Think about the experiences of Aboriginal people in this country over the last 120 years. I don't need to tell you or tell your audience some of those experiences, but things like the stolen generations, things like massacres, things like exclusion, segregation, and yet this is Aboriginal people from right across the country putting their hands up and putting their hands out and saying, come walk with us to a better future.
Now, you've got 4 or 5 months remaining now that the race is underway. Do you think you have enough time to convince enough people to support the yes vote?
Sarah, I have every faith in the Australian people. And I am so pleased that people want to know more information. People, in many instances, are just coming to understand that we're going to have a referendum. Many people are learning for the first time that we've got a constitution. Now, this is absolutely about changing those outcomes, making a practical difference to the lives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And there wouldn't be one person watching tonight that would think that those outcomes need to be changed. People in this country understand that things are not fair, things are unequal, and the life outcomes for Aboriginal people are not correct. The Voice is about helping us understand what the answers are, where things need to change and how they can change.
Let me just ask you this. Earlier on I asked you what it is, whether you understood what it is that your opponents in the Voice debate fear. What is it that you fear now?
I don't fear anything. I absolutely believe that this is going to be successful. I believe that the Australian people, as they come to understand that this is going to make a practical difference in the lives of Aboriginal people, and that we, as one of the only first world nations with a settler history, will finally complete our constitution, and that the First Peoples of Australia will be recognised as that in our constitution.
Minister Linda Burney, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks.